Good morning, everyone. And why safety in Stockholm? So I don't need to say anything about how safety became a critical issue, including politically in Sweden. But what we know is that how the urban environment can drive different perception of safety. So here in this research, we're less interested in crime itself, but how people perceive safety in the public environment. And as we walk in the streets in different times of the day, including, you can say, oh, perhaps this place looks safe or safer than the other place. And what we try to measure are two things. First, how, if we could use machine learning models to predict how people would perceive safety in the city, but then compare with other measurements of safety in the city. So basically, this is our general goals. And one important thing for us here is first to automatize the process. Can we use computer vision as a proxy of safety perception in city, but then compare with the actual crimes and other perception models. And the first thing that we decided to do, and this is very new for the city of Stockholm, is the following. So there are a few models out there using computer vision to predict how people would perceive safety. So what we decided to do here in Stockholm for us was very important, is to ask thousands of people from Stockholm, from different neighborhoods, to assess images only from Stockholm if these images were safer or unsafer than the other one. And using this data only from Stockholmers, we retrain the model. So Stockholm has the first model about safety perception that was designed and refined by the city itself. So with this idea, we've been very careful in showing random images for all neighborhoods of Stockholm to people from different neighborhoods. We balance the respondents by the number of people living in each neighborhood, the number of images from each neighborhood, so to be more accurate as possible. And the perception of safety based on this model was our first input. But then what we saw was this first distribution on the map, which areas people seem to see as safer and which areas people seem to be unsafe. And what's interesting here is that we use Google Street View images of the city. So we could map, even though we had 20-something thousand responses, we could use all street segments to measure safety perception for each street segment of the city. And why this is important? Because later, instead of the city doing surveys repeatedly every year, we can use this model and simply every time that we have another scan of the city, we rerun the model. This was the first input. However, why this is important in the overall safety issue of Stockholm?
So yes, while this first map that you saw there, the AI safety perception map, gives us very interesting information, this is not enough to just to understand our people's safety perceptions. So that's why we also created these type of indicators of safety or ground truths of safety. And this is based on 3 different types of data sources. So first one, we looked at like traditional crime data, police records, but also used the app Ticktill, which is where you can record incivilities or other type of disorderly behavior and events. And then finally, also the Stockholm Stads Trygghetsmätning, or the Stockholm Safety Survey of 2020. And yes, so from the results, based on this, we will have 2 sets of results. First, we will try to understand the nature of the safety score that we've calculated, this AI safety perception map, and then also try to compare this with these ground truth measures. So the first step here is where we try to identify different type of environments that are associated with low safety scores and high safety scores. And during this analysis, we looked at the Stockholm basområde, and also divided the city into different planning regions, denoting different types of urban planning archetypes or typologies. So from the models, we saw that, for example, Region 5, which was characterized by single-family houses, villas, and attached housing, impacted the safety score very positively, and also the subway city type of the old ABC towns, as well as the inner city areas and more high density of buildings was also increased the safety scores. But also other variables such as the proportion of parks and green areas, as well as the proportion of recreational use, was also a positive influence on the safety score. Well, on the other hand, areas outside of or on the outskirts of Stockholm and these industrial type of areas and airports and so on were had a negative impact on the safety score. So this was the first set of results, and Vanya will continue with the other second step.
Yes, we also, of course, wanted to know how these safety scores were related to other kinds of traditional indicators of safety, like the police recorded data in a number of different types of crimes, like violence, property crime, vandalism, but also different types of, for instance, perceptions of the place, like a fear of crime in those areas that often is not related to victimization. And also information about incivilities. It could be, for instance, graffiti, littering, but also abandoned crimes, urination, defecations of animals that, of course, impact the perception of safety in those environments. And so what were the results? Does A.I safety reflect patterns of crime, fear of crime, and incivilities? The answer is, well, safety is a very complex or multidimensional issue, and our results show this pretty clearly. We see that the A.I safety scores, they reflect mostly the citizens' instant perception of the environment, the greenery and the built environment, and the values that they actually associate to those environments. While, for instance, the perceptions of a fear of crime would be related to those experiences that they have in those places. So there is some sort of a mismatch. Another piece of interesting result is that the A.I safety scores were related to places of high violence. The mechanisms are still to be unraveled, but this is quite clear. But we didn't find any evidence on the A.I safety scores in relation, for instance, to property crimes, whether they were high, or high levels of incivilities. These kinds of results are fundamental for interventions, in particular for crime prevention and measures of safety. Overall, I would say that it's really, really important that we really keep an eye on places that have a perfect match between, let's say, high safety scores and, for instance, low crime. Because, of course, we want to understand how this process would take shape in a more local level. And that's basically what we want to do in our next step in our near future, to investigate more in detail how the social interactions between individuals and environments take place, and which obviously will be fundamental for planning new residential areas. Thank you so much.